not that they're lazy, but that they are tired of fighting so hard.
Hello, and welcome to another podcast with Blether with Barberra. And I've got a very special guest all the way from the other side of the pond, a very young but talented and influential individual, Lawrence C. Harris. He's an author. He's influential individual. He's an inspirational speaker. He's got his own podcasts as well, and he's here to talk about all sorts of different things in relation to trauma and autism and survival. But what I'll do with, as I do with all my guests, Lawrence, so welcome, is I'll let you introduce yourself because I think it's just easier coming from you. And then we'll get on to some questions if that's all right with you.
Yes. So when people ask me to introduce myself, one of the first things I say is who I am today is far from who I used to be. When I was younger, I had severe trouble with making friends because of, like you mentioned, I have autism. So I think very differently than most people around me. And at 10 years old, little kids can be fierce. Like they can be vicious when you're not similar to them. So I was dealing with a lot of that. Then at 12, my dad became abusive to me and my younger siblings, which being the oldest, I took on the role of wanting to protect them and keep them safe. But, you're 12 years old, you really can't do much. So that did a lot on my mental health. Thankfully, my mom got me into therapy early on, so it never got as bad as it would have. And shortly after, at 13, he kicked me out the house. So I'm, and the COVID pandemic too. So it's like everything's falling apart all at once. And in the middle of all of that storm, I had the idea of, okay, I can't be the only person who feels this way. I can't be the only person who feels insecure, who feels sad, who feels stressed out, who doesn't know what they're doing. Like, I can't
Hmm.
be the only one.
No, definitely
So,
not.
yeah, and at that point in my life with therapy, I've been in for about 3 years. So I understood that I knew something. I knew how to get out of bed and clean my room again. I knew something.
Hmm.
So I decided to start making videos to try and help people who felt how I did. And I would just say, like, hey, here's 5 ways to feel more confident. Here's, a video
Hmm.
of me just talking about we had to be patient to get our goals and just sharing whatever I felt like on that day. And over the years, it built into me writing books. It built into me going on podcasts and sharing my personal experiences in hopes that somebody would hear that and go, I'm not the only one.
I'm glad that you've done that because it's, I've had a look at a few of your podcasts and it's great that there is somebody who's at your age and recognise quite early on who you are as a person. So therefore you can help because there's a lot of particularly young men at the moment round about your age that are pretty lost. And not just
Oh yeah.
because they may be neurotypicals, they don't necessarily have to gone through as well the traumatic abuse that you've been through, but they still lost. So to
Yeah,
have
just
somebody,
I was gonna say just take one look on social media and, take
Mhm.
a look at what young men get told about themselves, not just in America, but all around the world. If you don't look a certain way, if you don't have a certain car, if you didn't grow up in this place, if you don't have a certain degree, if you don't
Correct.
make a certain amount of money, if you don't have 1 million Instagram followers, women don't love you and your wife's gonna leave you and your girlfriend's cheating on you with the whole football team. That's what we
Yes.
get told all the time. And it sounds a little like extreme when you say it in the way I just said it. But if you're 15 years old and every day you go on Instagram, you see people who have the stuff you want and they're telling you that if you don't have it, you're not good enough.
Mhm.
That starts to actually have real effects on how you feel about who you are.
That is so true. That's going to lead me on, right? I'm going to just start with the number one question, if you don't mind. So, when a young person says, I don't care about my future, yeah, because a lot of them are, just seeing obviously these things and thinking this is unattainable, I'm never going to get this thing, I'm never going to be muscly or wealthy or successful. When they say, I don't care about my future, do you believe them or do you hear something else underneath that statement?
There's a mix of both because
Hmm.
when they get to the point of saying that, it's often because they've tried, but things just didn't work or
Hmm.
it didn't work in the time frame that they wanted it to. So someone who says, I don't care about my future, maybe they've tried studying, maybe they've tried going to the gym, maybe they've tried these things, but they feel lost and they feel like they're not making enough progress. So they give up as a way of trying to not have to put in the effort. Not that they're lazy, but that they are tired of fighting so hard.
Yes. Yes. And you know, I get that because although I'm considerably older than you by at least 32 years, Lawrence,
Yeah.
I went through terrible stuff as a child, abuse as well, but ultimately bullying at school. Lack of confidence, was bigger than, taller than everybody else, spottier than everybody else, terrible teeth, poor, so no fancy clothing. And you sort of, this isn't a new phenomenon with young men particularly. This has been around for a long time, but the social media element of it is obviously driving it more and more, because ultimately, like, you can't get away from it, can you? The sort of constant, oh, this is what you can have and this is what you need to have if you want to be successful type of thing. Do you see that more as a young person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something you just jogged my memory on too is that not just with young men, but people in general, a lot of us don't have any
Mm-hmm.
direction. Like we don't have any clear pathway that is meaningful to us. And when you don't
Mm-hmm.
have an idea of like, because we get told things such, you go to school, you go to college, you go get yourself a degree, get a job. But if that's not what you want, you feel lost because you don't know where to start. And it's hard to care about your future when you don't have an idea of what that future will look like.
Yeah, I think there's a lot down. That's a lot down to self worth, isn't it? Because people don't have. A lot of people have lost that self worth in within themselves. They don't feel that they've got. Well, this goes to this. You're of a generation now where obviously a lot of earning comes from this, what we're doing. But
Yeah.
I'm of a generation where a lot of earning, and maybe your sort of guardians, parents, grandparents would have worked. We call it working class over here. I don't know what it's named as in America, but
Yeah, we
you
call
went
it that
out and
too.
you, same thing, 9 to 5 or whatever you shift as, you do a job and you've got a purpose, and people have lost that purpose now because closure of industries around the world, which is not such a bad thing really for the planet, but we're not filling it with anything that gives somebody a reason to get up, so to speak. Do you see that as
Yeah,
well
like
in young people?
yeah, I see it in young people, and I can. As you were saying that, I started thinking about my grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
So he worked in manual backbreaking type labor jobs like factories, mines, stuff that is heavy labor. And it sucked.
Mm-hmm.
However, he was able to raise 13 children off of one salary. They weren't living luxury, obviously, but they were fed, they were clothed, they were provided for. And
Mm-hmm.
it gave him a sense of purpose. It gave him a sense of, I'm waking up providing for my family. I'm waking up and I am being a role model to my children.
Mm-hmm.
When young people, we don't really have these sorts of things because, unfortunately, a lot of us are raised without strong father figures or strong mother figures, whatever the person needs.
Yeah.
And without that sense of direction and purpose, you're like a boat drifting in the ocean with no sail. You're just going wherever the wind blows you. You feel lost and you fit into the crowd because you don't know what you want, so you surrender your autonomy to the group.
That's correct. And self worth is a phrase people use a lot at the moment. Sorry, but what does it actually look like in a young person's day to day decisions? Do you find? What are you seeing when you're asking people or having your talks and etc.?
It looks like treating yourself like someone that you love.
Mm-hmm.
So when people lack self-worth, they do things to either try and fill that void with something outside of them. So it might be, I'll feel good when I have money. I'll feel
Mm-hmm.
good when I have that girlfriend or boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
I'll feel good when I have straight A's or I have my first job or my first car or my first apartment. I'll feel good when something outside of me. That's not self worth. That is filling a void with
Mm-hmm.
material things. But real self worth is I can sit with no money and still feel good about myself as a person. I
Yeah.
might feel bad about my financial situation, but me as a person, I can go to sleep and love myself. I might feel a little, like, man, I would love to have a girlfriend or boyfriend that I could go on picnics with and do cute things with.
Yeah.
But I'm fine with myself too. I I might want the high paying job and $1 million and the fancy car, but I'm fine with driving anything. Like I'm just fine with getting from point A to point B. I
Yes.
feel good about myself, whether or not I have the shiny thing. And how that looks in a young person's day to day life is their friends are people that are actually good for them. They're in relationships that are beneficial.
Mhm.
They're not afraid to leave friendships, relationships, and distance themselves from people who are blatantly disrespectful or hurting them. They don't put money above their own self. They're not trying to be someone else. They're just being them.
Yeah, and do you know, that resonates so much with me. So I'm at that point now where, um, I had a very good job 3 years ago in law, paid quite a lot of money, and then moved countries, and I became living in the country. So now I'm more happy than I was when I was younger and I was chasing the dream of the Lamborghini and the mansions and all the sort of
Yeah.
trappings. So more than happy, but I'm glad to see that there's somebody. If I'd have met somebody like you when I was in my 20s, maybe my path would have been different. But then obviously we don't see, I don't live in regrets because my path led me to here eventually. But it's nice to hear that there is a young person out there who is overcoming this societal pressure to follow those wild dreams, to be a celebrity, be famous, be an influencer with all those millions of followers and all of those things that I don't think make anybody really happy. Like you say, self-worth is an internal thing that you can sit in a room with nothing and still be happy with who you are.
Yeah, and the most interesting thing about it too is that the more you build it, the
Mhm.
less you really are worried about outside stuff. Like I was talking to a guy a few weeks ago, and he was okay. So I'm gonna keep this really vague
It's okay.
because we share an office building. But he was talking to me about his car, and he drives a BMW, and
Mhm.
he was just telling me about how cool his car is and stuff. And I'm like, I mean, it's a car.
Mhm.
Like it's a car, and not obviously not disrespecting the car because he worked hard for it, he takes care of it, and it's a beautiful car. But I
Mhm.
told him, well, I mean, it's a car. I'm glad that you enjoy it, and he seemed shocked by that because I wasn't impressed by it.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's a piece of metal. I mean, it's a pretty piece of metal, but it's a piece of metal, some rubbers, buttons, wires. It's a car.
Mhm.
It doesn't really do anything special. It's a vehicle. And the more you build your own self-worth, the less you are driven by other people's possessions because you might feel proud of them. You might be like, wow, I would enjoy having that. But you're not
Mhm.
jealous, you're not envious, you're not comparing what you have to what they have. You feel good about your life. And the more you feel good about your life,
Mhm.
ironically, the better it becomes because instead of chasing the money, I
Mhm.
chase giving value. Like I wake up and the first thing on my mind is how can I make people's life better? Like what
Mhm.
if today was my last day? What would I want to share with the world that could make their life better? And
Mhm.
by doing that, the money comes. So the more you have self-worth,
Yeah.
the less you need to it's not on you, it's in you. That's the best way I can put it.